Hey guys, welcome back to this week's pull here on Comic Relief Cast. I'm your host Jake.
And I'm Josh. Hey Jake, got a quick question for you.
Alright, let's hear it.
What are the mysteries of love?
That's a good question.
What are we reading?
And with that, guys, what we're going over today is The Cosmic Agony and Ecstasy of Mysteries of Love in Space, number 1. Action Comics, number 1007. Justice League Annual, number 1. Batman Detective Comics, number 997. Wyrd, number 1. Teen Titans Annual, number 1. Flash Annual, number 2. Heroes in Crisis, number 5. And with that, we're going to get started with Mysteries of Love in Space. And there's a lot of writers, a lot of artists. There's about 8 different stories in this. I'm going to guess it's about 10 pages, roughly, per story.
80 pages.
Yeah, it's an 80 page. It's a big book for $9.99. And you got talented writers like James Tynion in here, Kyle Higgins, Saladin Ahmed, Cecil Castellucci, and, I'll go through them. Aaron Gillespie, Andrea Shea, Jeff Loveness, and Gardner Fox. So there's a bunch of them. Bunch of different stories happening in this one, and I gotta say, I did not expect much out of this book. I thought, this is weird. You're putting out basically a Valentine's Day book at the end of January. I would have saved it for at least maybe another week's release to, get butt up against closer to the actual Valentine's Day. But this little book I actually found quite charming.
There's very few stories in here that actually, you know what, now I'm thinking about it, there's not really that many stories at all that I was disappointed in this series.
Yeah, there's only one that I just didn't care for, and it was the reprinted Adam Strange thing in the very back. I started going through it, I was like, you know what, I don't care about this, but it's a reprint, it's not a brand new story. But all in all, I really liked it, and the one that I surprisingly liked the most was the Lois Lane talking about Superman. They do it in a way where it's like, this is all the stuff that you kind of already know about Superman and the way people may think about, but you just don't really consciously think about it.
Yeah.
And so when you bring it to the forefront, you go, wow, yeah, Superman really does carry a heavy burden. He kind of, he carries that cross himself, and it makes me appreciate, the big blue Boy Scout a little bit more than I usually do.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing after I was reading it. It was like this stuff, and you just kind of forget it because they always want to make Superman seem all powerful. But it does definitely remind you, why Superman is a great superhero, and why, because I know there's a lot of people out there that don't really think that Superman should be their favorite superhero because he's all powerful and has no problems. But then when you read this, you kind of go, now I understand why people pick Superman as their favorite superhero.
Right. Yeah. They show how grounded and
how human.
Well, I was gonna say, I think White Zombie would be more human than human.
Yeah.
He's a very good character, and a lot of writers don't get a chance to touch on him the way they did in this book, and it was from the perspective of Lois Lane. The other one I really liked too was actually the Kilowog one. Yeah. That was a great little story.
The Kilowog one just makes me mad because I was reading it and I'm just going why don't we have a book, a series, ongoing series that is kind of based in this same kind of idea of Kilowog,
doing
teaching
a
new
training
recruits.
camp. Yeah. I also surprisingly liked the Bizarro one a lot more than I thought I was going to. The one, my least favorite one was probably the Hot Girl one. It was probably the weakest out of the bunch, but I'd say...
And also reminds you why Jessica Cruz is not a good Green Lantern.
I'm not a fan of Jessica Cruz. But no, I will say that if this is up your alley, this is something that I would definitely recommend picking up. It's not something that I would pick up, but as you were talking about, there might be a couple first appearances as well.
Oh yeah, there's about... I think 2 or 3 first appearances in this book, and they're not boring first appearances. They're characters that I'm going I think that there's going to be a handful of people that's going to really enjoy these characters, and if DC is smart, they'll start including these characters into some other storylines.
Yeah, I like the Cabbie one. It actually reminded me a lot of Her with Joaquin Phoenix, kind of falling in love with his phone.
I was actually surprised with how much. I thought that one I was going to hate it.
Yeah.
And then I read it, and I was like, I actually like this one.
It was a good little story. So with that, guys, I will unveil this week's rating system. It is going to be this book. I'm going to say I would have thought going into it I'd give it a 2. I'm actually going to go 3.2 joysticks on this one.
I'm actually about 3.25 joysticks. And that's also because I'm a little biased because it has a beautiful Joel Jones cover.
It does have a good Joel Jones cover. All right, moving on to Action Comics 1007 by Brian Michael Bendis. And the reason I picked this up is, one, it's the start of a new arc, and Steve Epting is doing the art in it, and I love Steve Epting ever since I saw his stuff on Brubaker's run on Captain America. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to pick this back up. I haven't really read it since I think 1004. So I missed a few issues, and it's okay. It's nothing spectacular. Even the colors on Epting's art I don't think do it justice the way it was done in Brubaker's Cap. But I do like Jimmy Olsen in this book, but it is a very quick read. It is I feel like when you're paying this much for a book, a $3.99 book, you should get a little bit more out of this. And this is kind of a constant complaint I've had with Bendis' Superman stuff. Since he's splitting his writing talents between so many different titles and 2 Superman titles, it doesn't feel like you get a full comic book's worth of story in just one issue.
Yeah, and then also the other thing too is like, most likely, if you're a person that's picking up Action Comics, you're picking up Superman as well, especially since it's being written by the same person. But they don't really kind of go hand in hand together at all.
Much, yeah,
it's definitely, you see that there's a different time frame, especially with the Man of Steel like prelude to these books. Like, you start realizing the further you're going how far apart these 2 stories actually are, and so it makes you wonder, why was Man of Steel actually even a thing?
Yeah.
My problem with the book is that there is not a whole lot to it. But with that being said, Steve Epting, even though like the coloring is not the greatest, his pencils are good in this book, and it does have a few good moments that happen in this book. It's just there's not a whole lot of meat on this bone.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the one highlight of this is there's a conversation between Lois and her father.
Yeah,
I think that's a great little moment for the book. But all in all, it's not a great story. But I can't say I hate it, but I didn't really love it either.
Yeah, it's like right there. It's lukewarm.
Yeah, especially when you read such a good Lois Lane Superman thing right before.
Right. I
did
the mistakes. I did the mistake of like, I was like, now I'm in a Superman mode.
Yeah.
After reading that Lois Lane, so I read this one immediately afterwards, and then like I got this nice little moment of Lois Lane in this, but just not enough for me to be like.
Yeah,
really
you don't get
about.
Anything particularly in depth from Superman here. You get, like I said, you get some good Lois Lane stuff. But with that, I'm going to give this one 2.65 joysticks.
I'm at 2.75 joysticks.
All right, I'm going to move on to the Justice League Annual #1. It's by Scott Snyder and James Tynion, and I can't remember who the writer is, but so this one is something I've been lukewarm on Justice League. I flip-flop between liking it and not liking it. A lot of times it's the Legion of Doom stuff by James Tynion that I'm a real more of a fan of. But this one, I have to say, I actually really enjoyed this book, and there are some really big ideas happening here, some things that feel very abstract in concept, so it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around it, but it's going back to the Source Wall stuff, it's going back to the No Justice stuff, and it's not too far a departure from what the most of the Justice League run has been so far, but I really like this, and Kendra Saunders, she plays a very significant role in this book, and there are some moments between her and John Jones that I really like, but basically what's going on is they want to repair the Source Wall, because inside the Source Wall, entrapped is basically the mother of the entire multiverse. She's like the creator of everything, and so the Titans all have to go back to the wall to kind of secure it. Like, their life is basically all about securing that wall. So, they got 3 or 4 different teams all bringing these Titans back, these ancient Titans from the beginning of time, to put this wall back. And Kendra Saunders actually ends up being one of the people that needs to be there. So she's ready to dedicate her life to living there on the Source Wall for the rest of eternity to keep this creature at bay. I will say that this book might be considered a hot book here soon, because it is the first appearance of a character, and from what I can tell going forward, it is going to be a big character. I have to say, I really enjoyed this book. It did take a little bit for it to get going, but granted, it is an annual, and you are at a $4.99 price point. It's a lot to read. It is a lot to read, and it's a lot of big ideas to wrap your head around, but I would absolutely suggest this book to any and all fans of Justice League, and anybody who's actually a fan of the DC universe as a whole, because I think this is going to be intersecting with a few other titles here soon. I think Justice League Dark's going to be one of them. I wish I had it queued up right now, but it looks like there's about 3 or 4 other DC titles that will be affected by what happens in this book. So with that, I'm going to give this book a 3.75 joysticks, and I'm very surprised to be saying that.
I read Detective Comics 997 by Tomasi and Mankey. I mostly picked this one up because last time Detective came out, I read it, just trying to fill it out a little bit, and I kind of wanted to see if I was saying a lot of praise on that, about how that versus Tom King's Batman.
You're on countdown watch to Detective 1000 for us.
And that too, yes, I'm on countdown watch. And so I decided to read it, and I really enjoyed 996. I read this, and I still enjoy it, and I still like it more than Tom King's Batman. But the one thing about this is I am seeing a little bit of cheesy quality to it that I can see where some people would be a little, what's the word I'm looking for, that have distaste for. There's some, like the way Batman gets out of situations is very old school Batman. But I mean, it was a fun issue. The artwork is great. Mankey's doing a great job. I wish that I did read a couple issues before 996 because there is a thing that Batman is going after, and I still don't know what it is. And I feel like it was something that was addressed a couple issues back that I don't know about. But it was a fun issue. It was just pretty much him and Thaddeus Brown, the original Mr. Miracle, trying to get out of a trap. And there you go. With that being said, I'm going to give this book about 2.75 joysticks.
All right, moving on to Wyrd, WYRD. If you guys listen to our best of worst of 2018, this was actually on our watch list, so we thought we would go over it today. It's by Kurt Pires, Antonio Fuso, Stefano Simone, and Micah Myers, not Michael Myers. And basically what it does is it centers around this character who's kind of a mix between Captain America and like a John Constantine type character. It is more of an adult book. There's more adult language. There's more some adult themes being tackled in this. But basically, it's this character who goes to Russia, finds this kind of ghost town, and has to save this child, and finds out what is terrorizing it. But that's kind of in the background. The foreground is more just who is this main character. We're kind of getting bits and pieces of who he is in his past. We find out he's kind of back from the 1940s. It's also some very blatant homages to Captain America and his origin. But at the very end, there's this talk with him and a woman from back in the day that makes you wonder if the character we're seeing now is actually the child of the flashbacks, or if he's just been living that long. But it was an interesting read. It was a good start, a decent start to a series. But what I think is this book has potential for something very cool in the future. But I can't say this thing wowed me.
Yeah, it was, for a first issue, I usually had this expectation that it's supposed to grab you and it gets you hooked onto it when the very first issue. And this one is lacking that grab. But for the most part, it does put out a couple of ideas that are very interesting that will kind of pique your curiosity to want to continue reading.
Or you'll feel it's a complete rip-off of a couple
other
characters.
Or you'll feel like it's a rip-off of other characters. It does have a Constantine feel. You do have some Captain America feel to it. Hulk a little bit.
Yep.
So you do get these like feels of other ones. Some people might find it to be a little bit more humbling. People that are like into Black Hammer probably will find this to be a little bit more humbling and kind of enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Lemire even does a variant cover for it.
Yeah, and so I don't know. It's like I was telling him, as I was telling Jake after I got done reading it, was I'm having a hard time kind of thinking how I feel about this book because there just wasn't enough meat on this bone, which is going to be my phrase for this episode. But there just wasn't a whole lot there to kind of go off of. But there is a curiosity that has been piqued for the next issue.
Yeah, I definitely want to see at least what happens in the first 3 issues to really kind of get my bearings on how I feel about this book. It is from Dark Horse. If anybody is interested in picking up, it is a $3.99 book. But the hardest thing I'm having with this is knowing how I'm going to rate this one because, as you said, there's not a lot of meat on that bone. Mm-hmm. But there are some ideas that do interest me. So for that, I'm going to have to be honest and say 2.65 joysticks. I don't feel I can go much more, but I definitely can't go lower than that either.
Beautiful. I mean, I agree. It's 2.65. I can't really, and I'm saying that like with a grain of salt, because like there's a chance that once I read the second issue, it will go up higher. I will suggest that if you are a Constantine fan, I'd probably pick it up. I think that you'd really enjoy the book.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on to Teen Titans Annual #1. It's by Glass and Benjamin, and I really dug this book here. So there are 3 stories in this one. Well, I'm gonna say 2 and then like 2 little epilogues. But the first story is basically Damian and Jason Todd, and they're not getting along too well. If you guys have been reading the Teen Titans book, you might understand why Damian isn't really trusting Jason Todd. So they have a nice little fight and they duke it out. Pretty cool stuff. But the longer story is it's where we got our rating system, but what I would say is it's a device used to kind of get some introspection from the characters. How are they feeling about each other? How are they feeling working in this group together? There's a character used as a device here where we kind of get a little bit of insight on how what characters feel about other characters, and I think that's good. I think that's needed in a team book like this. I think we need to understand not only how they function as a team, but how do they view each other as a team.
And then also with that being said, too, with that, because like you're as a reader, you're learning about how these characters are feeling about each other and how they're interacting with each other. but at the same time, it does brings up the potential for there to be more conflict between the team. And that is one thing that I really liked about this Teen Titans run, is that they are not a good team.
They don't gel.
They're not a good. Yeah, exactly. They're not a good team. I mean, they get the job done for the most part, but the thing is, though, is they do not flow well. There is problems within the team. There's too many secrets. There's too much stuff going on.
Distrust.
Yeah. And because of that, that's why I think makes this book so much fun compared to other team books. And that beginning story with Robin and Red Hood was great. I love that. I love that story. But the whole book, this whole run has been great.
It is, and I like the fact that this book leaves us with going, okay, there are going to be future problems with this team. Yes, they're going to get together and they're going to make things happen when it counts. But there is discord being sown with the team as well, and that leads for more drama, which also ultimately leads for more interesting storytelling. So with this issue, I'm going to give this a 3.3 joysticks. Good issue.
I'm always a little bit higher on Teen Titans because I like it so much. I'm 3.75.
All right, moving on to the Flash Annual number 2. The reason we're going over this one, guys, is because it is a Heroes in Crisis tie-in. So if you guys are picking up Heroes in Crisis, I would also recommend picking up the Flash Annual. Hopefully your local comic shop knew to order enough of those for everybody pulling Heroes in Crisis, because this is a tie-in. You're going to want to pick this up. But this is it's dealing with the fallout of the death of Wally in Heroes in Crisis. And what's also it does confirm is that Impulse from Young Justice, that Young Justice book is now technically canon because Impulse shows up in here. But what I also didn't realize was that Impulse never hasn't showed up during Rebirth. So this is his first real interaction with the greater Rebirth universe, and it seems that things aren't really computing with him as far as who's alive, timeline, a few other things, and it makes you go, okay, this is interesting. How is this going to play out in Heroes in Crisis? How is this going to reverberate throughout the rest of Flash and what's going on with Young Justice?
Yeah, this okay. One thing I am going to address is I can't remember what the artist's name is, but it was an artist that was doing Flash there for a while that was really bugging me.
Yeah.
And then they switched artists, and then they kind of go back with him on this annual. I'm not a fan of this artist that much. But yeah, it was kind of nice because that's one thing that happened was they mentioned Impulse at the end of Flash Wars, and then they don't mention him again, and then Young Justice comes out, and then it's just like, there he is again. They haven't really addressed too much on this.
Scott Collins.
Yeah, there you go. And this was a good. I mean, I liked it as a tie-in. It was the one thing that the Flash run has been kind of missing. They've only really addressed Wally's death once for a millisecond in the actual ongoing series. So the one thing that most people were waiting, because they didn't believe that Wally was actually dead, was the fact that Flash hasn't really addressed it at all, to the point that people are starting to think that Heroes in Crisis wasn't even actually canon.
Right. And so, Godspeed's back, and we find out Godspeed is working for somebody. Someone else is kind of pulling his strings. So Godspeed, him and Flash are coming to blows, but he might not actually be so much returning in a villain capacity as much as he's just doing something that he feels maybe for the greater good. But who he's working for is kept a secret in this book. I know Josh has his working theories. We're not going to divulge them here. I think it's something for people to work out. But I think you might be on the right track, but I'm not inclined to agree with you. I think it might be somebody else.
I think that it could be somebody else, but
your idea is interesting.
I got this idea, and I feel like it might be.
If that's true, I think it's going to make for a very good Flash series going forward.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give Flash Annual number 2 a 3.1.
Yeah,
joysticks.
I'm at 3.1 as well. It would have been better if they didn't have the same this artist on it. Colon or whatever.
All right, and the last issue is the one everybody loves to hate, Heroes in Crisis, number 5 of 9 by Tom King and Clay Mann. First thing I will say is Clay Mann still bringing his A game on the pencils, makes it great. I will say if you guys follow him on Instagram, though, there's kind of a splash page of Booster Gold and Blue Beetle chilling out on a couch, and I've been seeing this, around, but something really weird about seeing two dudes in spandex tights chilling out on a couch together in the dark. I don't know why.
You're just not open-minded, bro.
I guess not, but when you see it right in front of you like this,
I would expect us to sit around and hang out.
Right. Okay, but anyway, so So the last issue, Superman was telling the Trinity that Lois is going to run with the story. It's going to be made public. So this book is kind of dealing with the fact that it is now made public. Superman's kind of addressing the world, saying, "Hey, we're heroes, but we're not indestructible. We're not invulnerable. We're not infallible." So he's kind of explaining to the world what Sanctuary was or is and what its function was. And while that's all going on, there's still people searching for the death of the killer of Wally, and people are closing in further and further on some of their hunches.
Killer, don't just say Wally. It was a few
Arsenal,
people.
Commander Steel. There were
You
a few
can't
people
have
that
a
died.
little Arsenal. Come on.
Well, Wally is the biggest death. It's the one everyone's talking about. So I choose to address that. But everyone is kind of closing in and honing in on who they think is the killer. And there's kind of a wrench thrown in towards the end of this book on who the killer might actually be. And it's still got us questioning. There are no answers in this book, but I feel like we are starting to close in on who the killer is. But there are a couple working theories in this book, and I'm curious to see who's right.
Yeah, it's for starters, this is how you do an event. Like, by the halfway through, you kind of get to a point where you kind of go, okay, I kind of can see where this might be
Doomsday
ending.
Clock.
Yeah, and Doomsday Clock, you get halfway through, and you're just like, I'm going to throw a random book in
We're
here.
3/4 of the way through.
Yeah. But yeah, Clayman's killing it on the art. The story is still, I find it to still be intriguing. I'm hoping that this ends on a good, doesn't have to be a good note, but I'm hoping that it ends where the series actually becomes a good series.
Yeah,
a good little event.
Right.
Because I think that it's time that we need one.
For anyone who's wondering, this is definitely much more of a straightforward issue. This isn't your classic Tom King is speaking in riddles and metaphors. This is much more straightforward as far as the storytelling goes. You do have a couple interviews in Sanctuary, that people talking about it, but it feels much more apt to what's happening. It doesn't feel like this kind of obscure thing that people are talking about. It's like, why am I reading this? You kind of understand why thematically that's there and what they're talking about, and how it kind of fits in overall with the story being told. I actually think this might be my second favorite issue so far from Heroes in Crisis. I think, if I remember correctly, issue 2 or 3 I thought was really good. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but this is a good Heroes in Crisis issue. If you guys can get that Jason Todd cover, it's already showing on our Diamond website that it is back. It's not stocked, and it is back ordered, so people didn't order enough. We did thankfully get enough of them for everyone to get one, but don't sleep on this book. I really think that towards the end, this is going to be one of those books, kind of like Identity Crisis, that really splits the fandom, but one is going to think it's brilliant, the other is not going to like it because it hurt their feelings or whatever.
Yeah.
So
the one thing I will say about this book compared to the rest of the Heroes in Crisis, I heard some people complaining, is that some of the Heroes in Crisis doesn't have a whole lot of material going into it that really furthers the story. It's kind of a very quick read. Yeah. This one is probably the first one out of all of them that have a decent chunk of actual writing that's going towards the story. With that being, also, I gotta try to stop saying with that being said. Also, but it doesn't feel too wordy.
No, I completely agree. So I'm going to give Heroes in Crisis number 5 3.6 joysticks. I really liked it. Nothing from DC so far has really blown me away, but I think they're all solid installments to their respective series.
Yeah, I'm at 3.6 on Heroes in Crisis as well.
All right, guys. Well, that is all we've got for you today for the DC episode. We really hope that you enjoyed it. Please hit that like button if you haven't already, or hit that thumbs down button if you're a Heroes in Crisis hater and you think that we like it too much. That's fine. Tell us why in the comments below. Let's have that conversation. Share this with any of your comic book reading friends. And, of course, guys, subscribe to the channel. Last week's videos got a lot of love. We appreciate that. We hope that we keep getting your support. So, if you guys want weekly reviews every week on the new comic books, definitely make sure to subscribe so you can get those every time. And we will see you next time.
I like to play with my joysticks by myself.